Hi everyone, it is I. So I thought I'd do the first video on what I had asked on Thursday in the group. Now what I had asked was some of the more unusual and maybe misrepresented signs and symptoms of trauma. As we're all suffering from our own trauma, it differs. And so every symptom that we have that manifests into complex trauma or developmental trauma will differ as well. And sometimes these fall into the usual categories of anxiety, social situations, agoraphobia, insomnia, eating issues, obsessive compulsive issues, addiction. Things that are relatively common and are a common way of trying to cope after trauma. What I was more interested in was the more uncommon things that maybe people don't talk about or haven't heard as much about. Now, of course, this is kind of going to go into a little bit of personal detail because I have suffered from quite a few things that I never kind of tallied with trauma. Just one of those things that it may trigger. So, obviously, I'm here for support and for guidance, and so are many of our other members. I was really surprised actually on Thursday and on Friday when comments started creeping up to like 20, 30. And I was like, wow, this is actually quite common that people have these symptoms and not many people speak about them or not many people know. And so it really opened my eyes and gave me such a sense of knowing about the different things that could, manifest because of the trauma that we've went through. So I'm just going to start this section off by looking at some of the more uncommon symptoms that group members have said that they've experienced through having trauma. I'm not going to say that I can pronounce all of these appropriately, properly, whatever, but I do have here my trusty notes and beautiful diagram in order to help me along the way. I feel like these symptoms are really important to go over, so I'll try and do it from a kind of head to toe basis. So we find survivors of trauma dealing with speech issues. This I definitely suffer from. You'll be able to tell this through the video. I stammer, I stutter, and I lose words. And that's said to be because the blood from the area of the brain that controls speech and language tends to go somewhere else, aphasia. Now, that can be a result of a stroke or a traumatic brain injury, but it can also be because of a neurological disorder. When our survival mode is switched on, the firing goes straight to the amygdala. That's where it protects us. It's a natural response. It's going to happen and there's nothing that we can do to stop it. We can cope with it, but this is just what happens in our body, biologically wise. The blood starts travelling from the areas that are needed: hand movement, speech, hearing, even vision, and it goes straight to the survival part of the brain, the amygdala. That can cause a survivor to have trouble with their words, to have trouble interpreting what's said, blurry vision, double vision, insensitive hearing. Hyperacusis. Now that's when sound can become painful. Shrill sounds, alarms, some types of music, especially dubstep. Sometimes when there's 2 or 3 sources of music happening at the one time. And that's because the survival mode, the amygdala, is switched on and is trying to decipher each different sound, and it's trying to see if it's a threat. And this can be switched on, it could make it really irritating. You can become really agitated. It can become painful to hear noises. Prolonged gunfire, bang, 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 bang. Movies that are action films can be quite painful and sensitive. I kind of describe it to some friends that I've asked. It's like a self-constructed autism. I have a lot of symptoms that are similar to autism. Eye contact, even looking at myself in this video is difficult. I have sensory issues with noise, and that's because of trauma. I don't have autism as a child and growing up. I'm perfectly fine in social situations, I understand emotion, and I don't have any other autistic traits, but it seems that trauma is a kind of constructed autism, and I can see that in a way. Other issues that can result is dyspraxia, clumsiness, falling over one's feet, memory loss, forgetfulness. I can't tell you how many bank cards I have had. Seriously, it's a running joke in the family, but it's quite agitating. You can become diagnosed with a functional neurological disorder. And you might be able to see either in this video or videos forthcoming, you'll maybe be able to see tics, spasms, twitching. It's very subtle, but if you look for it, it's there. Sometimes my leg can move, my arms can twitch, my neck can spasm. I can shake my head, even though I don't mean it. So it can look at people that I'm going, because I do look a bit, miserable sometimes. I lack facial expression. I tend to have quite a, no facial expression. It can be hard for people to read me, and that's probably why I do it. I spent a long time in my life being judged and called a liar, cheater, whatever. And so I changed my facial expression. I changed the way I talk. I don't show as much on my teeth. My teeth's a real trigger. I mean, you've got your clenching of your jaw, your grinding of your teeth, and it causes cracks. You need to get fillings. You put yourself on the dentist chair, you get a man or woman standing over the top of you, you feel a bit vulnerable. It can be a trigger. Now I'm hoping to go into what trigger responses do biologically later on in the video. Trauma symptoms that might not be associated with trauma also include chronic pain. And that can be in your back, your shoulders, it can be held in your legs and your calves. There is a graphic that I've added into the files section of our group that shows where each emotion is stored in the body, and I really feel that that's beneficial for you to have a look at. Trauma can progress to Raynaud's disease, arthritis. So that's changes in the climate causing puffy purple hands that you can't use, pain in your joints. And this is because of the protein breakdown inside your body. It can also cause dry skin, psoriasis, eczema. I have eczema, and I can find that facial eczema can be a trigger. That's because everybody sees your face. My eczema tends to start behind my knees and on my stomach, and if you can find it, usually before it gets too bad, you can tend to it and make it better. It's just another uncommon symptom of trauma that you may be experiencing. And if you are experiencing that, you're not alone. Symptoms of trauma can also cause hives, stress reactions in the skin, sort of red, mottling of the skin, swelling. I mean, that can last for as long as you're stressed, but it can also last longer. It can become chronic. And I'm going to try and pronounce these words, and you can tell me if I get them wrong. But hives and swelling of the skin that last for longer than 6 weeks are called chronic idiopathic angioedema or chronic idiopathic urticaria. Yeah, get back to me on how to pronounce that. It can cause gut issues. So sometimes when we're triggered, digestive enzymes speed up. We can have IBS. We can have malabsorption of food, vitamin issues. We can have all associated symptoms of vitamin deficiency, which include twitching, being cold, being fatigued. Also symptoms of lupus, which is also an unknown symptom of trauma, colitis, fainting, and headaches, migraines, one of which I have right now. A headache, not a migraine. Let's be real. But we can see why. I mean, our brains are constantly working. I know I'm constantly searching my environment for triggers, stress, danger, whatever. That causes headaches. The fact is, I don't drink enough water. It plays a part. And Elena did a post recently on healthy eating and how beneficial it is for trauma survivors. Especially when we've got gut issues and IBS, it's really important to sort of balance that catalyst of digestive enzymes, balance it with probiotics. Another symptom of trauma that may not be known is unintended weight loss, and that's not because we're not eating. We could eat hamburgers, pizza, sweets. Our body's literally going so fast it's running a marathon inside, and no wonder we're losing weight. Some people call it divorce diet. Some people think we don't eat. In some cases that's true, it's a coping mechanism, but even when we want to eat, we don't actually show the signs. Other unknown symptoms of trauma. There goes my speech. Heart issues. As we know, stress, it has a lot of impact on our body and our heart. And our heart rate increase, our blood pressure increases. We can have issues with valves. We can have issues with palpitations, heart disease. We can also have issues with cholesterol and the breakdown of muscle protein. And the heart is a muscle. And when we're in a triggered response, which I'm going to go into in a minute, it actually breaks down the proteins in our muscles, one of which is the heart. So we can see why heart issues are common in survivors of trauma. Not widely spoken about though, as it's a pretty grim subject, and I'm sorry, but it is. It can be scary to think that your trauma may cause a stroke or a heart attack, but stress does this to the body. People who have anxiety that have not experienced trauma also are at a higher risk for heart attacks, for strokes. Women are, as a gender, at a higher risk of stroke, and that may be due to how we process emotion and store stress within our body. Something that I personally went through, I think from about 2015, was psychogenic seizures. Psychogenic seizures is a response, a severe response to anxiety and stress, where the individual or the patient looks like they're having a seizure but doesn't match up with their brainwaves, because when you have a seizure your brainwaves go erratic. However, in my case, my brainwaves did go erratic, as was caught during neurological testing, but at the time doctors took my background into more account than hard evidence sitting in front of them. So the seizures that I experience are due to me doing too much, drinking too little, eating too little, causing too much stress can be a trigger for genuine seizures, and these can be a result of trauma. It's definitely required to go and see a GP who will refer to a neurologist if you're suffering from any of these symptoms. I would find myself completely blacking out, having what's known as giggle seizures, where something wouldn't be funny that I would laugh at and I couldn't control. I'd laugh, pause, laugh, and it affected my breathing, the oxygen levels getting to my brain, and it just wasn't a good combination. I would experience other seizures, it was general convulsing, and I did have on my brain scan abnormal brainwaves. It's a fight. When you're diagnosed with trauma, it can be a fight to be diagnosed with anything else that is genuinely happening. And even down to spine issues that I have a psychological basis for. I have an MRI that shows my disc is completely bulged and is wearing away, and that's pressing on a lot of nerves, which is causing issues with my hands and my legs and puckling, and so a lot of symptoms emerging in, and I require surgery on it, but this surgery is prolonged because my pain is said to be coming from trapped emotion, which I'll go into at a later section. During this section, I'm going to look at how stress is actually stored in the body and what parts of the body that it's affected. Now, this might be useful when you're thinking, well, this is sore today, or, I'm having issues with headaches, migraines, twitching, this or that. You'll know which area you kind of look at, and also what is said to be the cause of, what emotion is said to be linked to that. Now, that also goes with the graphic that I've uploaded into our files section, which I obviously highly suggest you look at. It goes into this in a lot more detail, but I'm just looking to sort of do an overview of this on top of some of the sort of unknown symptoms that us trauma survivors have been facing. Stress is said to affect the head, so migraines, functional neurological disorder, psychogenic seizures, speech issues, hearing issues, autoimmune conditions, all said to be caused by stress. Our neck is said to be due to us having a lack of forgiveness. Now, I'm just reporting what I've read. It goes down onto our shoulders, where we carry an emotional burden. So we might find where shoulders are hunched. It creates knots, tension, spasms, pain, chronic pain. It can make tendons weak. It can cause injury if you try and exercise. A little bit unknown, if you're trying to exercise and you're tense, you're at risk of pulling muscles, tendons, and causing significant injury to your physiological body. When we look at our chest and our hearts, we're said to be suffering from emotional support where we're lacking. So the support structure around about us is not sufficient. We're not receiving adequate support, or the support we're receiving is abusive, coming from narcissists or a toxic relationship. Usually experiencing some chest pain, some heart issues. Within our gut, so issues like IBS, diarrhoea, constipation, malabsorption of food, That's said to be due to financial worries. It's also said to be due to anxiety that's held within the gut. And people with anxiety that have not experienced trauma can suffer from a lot of gut issues. Those that are fearful of change are said to experience issues within their hips. Tension and jealousy produces issues within knees, and depression and a lack of pleasure will produce issues within the feet and the ankles. Now that section can be particularly helpful when we're looking at tapping or when we're looking at recovering the mind and the body. So Professor van der Kolk stated that recovering from trauma isn't just about recovering our mind or recovering our reaction or our phobias or our maladaptive coping, but it's also looking within our body. In order to know which part to look at, because as every trauma differs, every reaction differs, and every body differs, no pun intended, we have to start looking at our body and working on trauma release, mindfulness, yoga, meditation, whatever is helpful and works for you. There are things that are not helpful, and if you try something that sort of exacerbates trauma symptoms, stop. It doesn't mean to say that this will always be unhelpful. There's things that I couldn't do, say, years ago that I actually find helpful now. I find music to be a great way to help with meditation because I can't deal with silence. Silence makes my thoughts just ruminate and race and go off in tangents, a bit like I'm doing right now. So instead of, going off in tangents, I'm going to move on. I'm going to look at where muscle tension and what emotions are repressed or stored there. Now this is directly relating to the graphic, and it's where I got all my information from it. So this goes into it in a lot more, the graphic goes into it in a lot more detail than this does. But I also feel like it's really beneficial just for you to know that you're not alone and that these symptoms are experienced by other people. So when we look at shoulder tension, usually said to be because we have a burden or a responsibility. That might be because we have a responsibility for, say, a narcissistic parent. We're responsible for being the parent role. Or if we've got a responsibility in a toxic relationship to sort of be the mother or father for our spouse because they haven't been, nurtured in their childhood. A lot of issues then come into our shoulders where we are doing something that we shouldn't really be responsible for. Tension that's stored in the neck area is usually because of fear. And sort of, when we look at the back, it's a huge, not trigger point, but it's a thing for me since my back is so bad. Well, the first time I went to group therapy for CPTSD, the facilitator of the group did the whole, the icebreaker where you go around the room and you say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so and my week has been like," so interesting stuff. Anyway, we're all going around in a circle and gets to this facilitator and she's like, "Who here is suffering from pain? Who takes painkillers?" And I'm just like, I know where this is going. At the time, I probably had a mild reliance on painkillers, which I'm really proud to say I don't have anymore. I don't take enough. It's funny how I went from one extreme to the other. But the back is said to hold tension. So much so that even with a physical proof that, my spine is bulging and the nerves are compressed, if that was another person who didn't have depression, who didn't have trauma or didn't have anxiety, they'd probably receive surgery quicker. They probably would not have been put through the same mill that I did in getting my diagnosis. I was sent to pain clinics where we were told to meditate through the pain, work on yoga, release your body. And this is all well and good. These are great, suggestions for tension that's held because of suppressed emotion. Doesn't quite work when you wake up in the morning and you feel like your lungs have collapsed. There is a physical cause. And I'm sorry, no amount of deep breathing is going to fix that. But when we do look at the back as sort of being an area of held emotion, we look at the upper back as being grief and sorrow. Now that's when I think unresolved memories and traumas would be. We're grieving over something we don't know what we're grieving over. And in some cases, grieving over things we do, which is, in my opinion, the lucky side. The mid-back is usually when a trauma survivor's feeling insecurity, powerless. Might be in a toxic relationship that's taking their power role away, it's taking control away, or has just left a relationship like that, or has been through, in cases of developmental trauma, this kind of role between their parents or caregivers their entire life. So that can be seen in the mid-back, the lower back, with guilt and shame and unworthiness, all symptoms of childhood emotional neglect, developmental trauma and adult complex relationship trauma. When we look at stomach issues and gut issues, the IBS, processing food too quickly or processing too slow, or our stomach or our digestive system, forgive me for saying that, just passing it right through. Some mornings, I can wake up some mornings, my gut is awful, and it's not functional until afternoon, and I don't want to eat. There's no motivation there to eat because I feel ill. I think my gut processes food too quick, and sometimes we don't know when we're being triggered or when our digestive enzymes are working too fast. And it can be really difficult to eat healthy, but it is important to sort of balance that with a probiotic. Issues in the gut is usually emotion-wise, is an inability to process emotions. That would probably say to be pretty true for myself. I don't process emotions, I can dissociate a lot, make myself busy, I write for the group, look at comments, and I message people, make sure they're okay. Do all those kind of responses just not to feel that feeling. And that can cause a lot of stomach issues. For more information on where the emotion's stored in your body, have a look at that file that I've added. It's at the top of the list, and it's really, really important, imperative, if you are suffering any of these tensions or any of these sort of issues that you don't know what it could be linked to. I also feel it's important just to know you're not alone, and that there will be people in our group that experience the same thing. So share, ask away, give me a message. I'm pretty lonely. No. Lack of support, chest issues. I'm here for you. Elena's here for you. The full group is here for everyone. And if anyone's experiencing any symptoms that they might not be sure where it comes from, you just give us a message and we'll be really, really happy to help. So in this final section, I'm going to look at what actually happens in our body when we've been triggered. I've added a file onto the group, and it looks at the biological response in our body when we experience stress. It's an amazing 54-page PDF. You are welcome. It looks into childhood emotional neglect. It looks into, try not to have a really thick Scottish accent. It looks into ACE response, ACE questionnaire, childhood developmental neglect, abuse, adult abuse, trigger reactions, what happens when we're triggered. It goes into details that I love. It makes a lot of sense. So really, if you can, have a read through it. If you need this in more detail, like a video response, I'll do that. Just give me a message and I'll sort of do some lovely notes that I have and get that out for you. I think I have in excess of about 100 triggers. Oh, my back's itchy. Sorry. No, okay. Excess of over 100 triggers. I don't know what some of my triggers are. Sometimes I don't even know I'm being triggered. But, in fact, I hate the word. I hate it. I spoke about it that much to my family and partner that I hate the word. But it happens a lot, every day. It can happen when I'm sleeping. It happens just when I'm like... I did a take of this video actually, and I triggered myself because my hand inadvertently slapped my leg. So, things you don't expect. Amazon deliver, this, Amazon's great because you know when the package is coming. It tells you on your phone, you're like, oh, it's 8 stops away, get ready. DPS, not so good. It's true though, right, I have these triggers that I don't even know I'm having sometimes. And it causes me to be up, here, I have this fight, flight reaction. It used to be fight, I used to be so aggressive, when I stopped training, when I stopped fighting. I used to be so aggressive. With throwing stuff, I'd break my fingers and I wouldn't even feel it, I'd just continue. Look at that finger, it's awful. I went from fight to other responses to safer coping. And the safer coping is writing for the group. And I help people through getting away from my emotions. Well, it's true though. You're welcome. God. Anyway, some of the triggers that actually happen, you know they're happening. You're up here and then you come down. Some triggers you don't know because it sends you into such a state, such a state of survival. You switch off. It's too scary. Your brain doesn't want you to experience this, so it's not going to let you. Your brain is your friend. I actually view my brain as like its own little person. It's like, switching off right now. No, dealing with that one. But that, your body also does its own set of survival, you know, so the blood just drains from your hands, your extremities. It rushes to your head, rushes to that amygdala. Don't even bother processing the trigger. Don't try and sit down and write, oh, I'm triggered right now. No point. This part of your brain here, shut off. That's the part you need in order to process it. It's not working, so you just have to write it down until it goes away, and then you can look back on it. Hindsight is essential. And forgiveness and patience. The amount of stuff, without using an expletive, the amount of stuff I've had to forgive myself for, if I had to sit and hold on to that, I would just feel like the ultimate abuser. My fight response resulted in a lot of reactions that I am in no way proud of. I never want to repeat. I never will repeat. The people that are involved know how sorry I am. I think about it every other day. But you have to give yourself that forgiveness. You cannot control what you're doing when you're triggered. Just like you can't control what your body is doing when you're triggered. When you're triggered, your salivary glands decrease. The flow of saliva in your mouth, cotton mouth central. You know that feeling when your throat closes up and you're like, can't talk? I feel like I'm literally shoved about 80 cotton balls in my mouth. That's a trigger. And it's important to recognise these as well, because see the triggers that you don't know, yet all of a sudden I've got a dry mouth. You're being triggered, because this is what the body does. Well, if we recognise our body more, we can start fixing it a little bit. I'm not saying we're going to get over it. No, I don't even know if it's possible. You can see in these videos going forward, you'll be able to see my tics, my little mannerisms, my stutters, my this, my that. Right now, my thumb's twitching like mad. But yeah, off on a tangent. Back to it. Saliva flow decreases. Pupils dilate. And that can cause headaches because of the light that gets in. And the pupils dilate in order for you to see things clearer. It's like a cat. Cats can see for miles with those dilated wee pupils. Same with us. Survival mode's on, we're looking for danger, our pupils dilate, we're going to get a headache. Blood vessels constrict, so we can start, getting the chills, we can get really, really warm, but we're shaking, trembling. And remember, being triggered, it can activate the amygdala and it can stay activated for days. I experienced this recently. Wasn't the greatest weekend. It took a long time to recover from, but I just had to give myself patience. So inside your body, your heart rate will increase, your blood pressure will increase, and obviously that can happen for a prolonged time. That doesn't just happen during the time of stress. I can be sitting here feeling absolutely fine, take my pulse and it's 120. So it's like your heart will get worn out, and it causes things later down the line, heart issues, cardiac disease, things like that. During a trigger, your heart's even worse. I don't know what it might get up to. I've not got the compass mentis at the time to go, hold on, being triggered. 185. No. So, the digestive enzymes speed up. There's a decrease of them, and it just either makes a process of food really slow or really fast. And I'm not going to go into that. It's awful. You feel sick, you don't feel right, you're on edge, you're shaking, you've been triggered. There's a muscle protein breakdown. So, obviously, as I said before, your heart is a muscle. And that is affected by when you're triggered. It starts breaking down the proteins, but it also means like your arms, your leg, your neck muscle, your butt. Why can't it happen with the stomach? Anyway, moving on. Muscle protein breakdown. Now for me, I was a fighter in a previous life. I would go into the ring in front of like 1,000 people, which is a stress-inducing situation. So I would be having muscle breakdown, but I'm required to use those muscles. So you see how things were difficult? And looking back on that, it actually makes me feel less terrible because I did so bad. I mean, I tried my best. It's the trying that counts, right? But you can see how when you're in a stressful situation, if you're being triggered or if you had trauma, muscle proteins breaking down affects the heart, affects your muscles, affects your performance, gives you extra symptoms of hate, worthlessness. You need to sift through all that. So if we focus on the body, we start sort of getting into trauma release exercises, anything else that works. Have a wee look at the site. So we did some mindfulness stuff, some embodiment things recently. If we get into that, we sort of calm down those body systems. Or other symptoms, physiological symptoms, we're getting to the end of the video, they alleviate. So, when we're triggered, our lungs constrict. Shallow breathing makes us lightheaded, can make us dizzy. Have you ever been up Mount Everest and tried to do a maths equation? That's what it's like. So I think Scotland's our biggest mountain's Ben Nevis. I've done it when I was in the maladaptive coping phase, and I timed myself to be the fastest up there out of the group and the fastest down. And I did it in 2 hours and 22 minutes, and it was awful. I didn't enjoy it. So there's a lack of oxygen up there, and you get up there and you're like, oh, this is kind of cool, feeling a bit dizzy. You feel that when you're triggered. Very, very similar. I also felt it getting into the ring, funnily enough, when I was fighting. When I was put on the spot in uni for doing talks and stuff, you get that, whoa, life's closing in kind of feeling. So sometimes these feelings can be so overwhelming that it just takes total control and it takes all your attention away, and you don't have the compass mentis at the time because this bit's switched off to say I'm being triggered. If you can look back on it and go, you know what, I felt that like 2 weeks ago when somebody said this, write down what they said, what you felt, and look at it, reflect on it. A little bit of mindfulness. A lot of people don't like mindfulness, and I was definitely that person. Don't like meditation, don't like silence. But if you don't like it now, it doesn't mean that it's not going to be helpful in the future. Because I've changed in such a way that things that I wasn't ever able to tolerate, and I thought I'm never going to be able to tolerate that. Brussels sprouts, kidding, silence. I can tolerate that a bit better. I'm sitting here right now. There's nothing on in the background, the TV's off, and I'm okay. So the symptoms that we can experience from trauma can be life debilitating at its least severe. Have any number of these symptoms, I want you to know you're not alone. And you're sitting here right now watching this, you're blessed. I'm blessed to be here talking to you despite everything that I have had to power my way through over the years. 31 of it. I'm blessed to be here helping. There could have been 6-7 times where I could have lost that ability to be here right now. And so I've decided to hold on to that and try not be as miserable and try and help a little bit more. So I built the group, and I hope this is helpful. You are in the blessed position of sitting watching this and the knowledge that you have trauma. What I'm going to say next, I just want you to feel proud of yourself, because not everyone knows that they're suffering from trauma. Some people don't know they're suffering from trauma until 70, 80, and a light bulb flashes, my God. That's why I've reacted like that my whole life, and they don't ever get the chance to feel better. There's thousands upon millions of people in the UK that's sitting with unresolved trauma that don't know it. I can look at my friends list and probably identify a certain number of people that I'd say were suffering from trauma. Clearly I'm talking myself out, and don't worry, we're nearly done. And they don't know they're suffering from trauma. You're sitting here with a blessed few that you know something. People with eating disorders, maladaptive coping that manifests into a mental illness, that's usually what an individual will go to the GP about first. I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I can't sleep, I'm not eating, I'm eating too much, I'm using substances, I can't stop being busy, all I want to do is sleep. and then referred to the psychiatrist, psychologist, oh, you've got an eating disorder, you've got depression. None of which is ever screened for trauma, every one of which is a symptom of trauma. And so hundreds of thousands, millions of people sitting in the UK right now, sitting in their house, having trauma reactions, having no idea, shouting at their kids, shouting at their husbands, shouting at their wives, shouting at mum, dad, kid, whatever. Shouting at the cat, shouting at the dog, hating their life, smoking, drinking, binge drinking. They have no idea why they're doing it. You're sitting here with the blessed position that you know something that you want to change. And not only that, you're here right now still watching. Thank you. I know how hard that can be. I need to watch this back, alright? You're sitting here still watching, still have the motivation to recover despite blurry vision, double vision, heart problems, dyspraxia, headaches, migraines, functional neurological disorder, psychogenic seizures, muscle wastage, lupus, colitis, ME, MS, can I go on? On top of trigger responses, on top of muscle tension. You're not alone. Something that helped me was the broken or the more evolved. I see things with my hypervigilance that people don't see when I'm out walking. I go walk with a group of people and I'm the only person that notices things. I'm proud of that. So let's turn a negative, if we can, into a positive. Because although I notice all the scary things and all the could-bes and what-ifs, I also notice the cat sitting on top of the roof that no one else notices. I also notice the change in weather as it's happening, the smell in the air. These things can make life so beautiful. The broken are more evolved, but we don't need to be suffering because of it. Unfortunately, we do suffer, and that gives us some sort of resilience. You don't think you have resilience, but you're sitting here with X, Y, Z symptoms, manifestations, secondary, tertiary mental illness. I'm sitting here ticking away, rocking, twitching, whatever. I'm still here, I'm still breathing, and I've still got the motivation to help you guys. I hope this video has been helpful. I hope it hasn't been too long. As I do more videos, they will get better, so bear with me on that one. I'm going to take my drawings and my notes, and I'm going to enjoy my weekend. I hope you all enjoy your weekend too, and I will be around to help and support all weekend and all week, as I always do. Can't wait to see you there. Bye!